Hello again, YouTube. It's the Atheist Guard, and today I'm going to be going over the anthropic principle and how it relates to the constants of our universe, and how that relates to the fine-tuning argument that we hear often from theists. Now, constants are interesting attributes of our reality that define parameters of various types. I mean, everything from forces to, you know what, I'm not going to go into that just yet. But basically, theists have bought into this concept that the constants are finely tuned for this universe. And a lot of them can't even define what the constants are. I can't even define what they are very well. But nonetheless, there are certain constants that if they were off by a little bit, this universe wouldn't have been the result. There could have been chaos, or this universe couldn't even have formed if the constants were off by this little bit, one way or the other. But a lot of that is sort of a backwards way of thinking. It's not like the constants were finely tuned intentionally to create this universe. It's just that this universe is what results from that specific set of constants. That's all it is. There's no reason to imply that they were actually tuned. So I'm going to go through a couple blackboard drawings that I made regarding this issue. Now, in the first picture here, we see the constants. And I'm just labeling them by universe types. That's what the U1, U2, U3, U4 represents. These are different universes. And the constants are these other letters here. And depending on the combination of constants, and their values, of course, you get certain types of universes. Now, in this universe that has A, B, C, D, E, F, that's the universe that results in intelligent life like us existing. That's not to say that in universe 4 here, FRABCL does not result in some other type of intelligent life that we have no conception of. But the parameters of that universe are so different that it wouldn't even look like our universe. Light might behave differently. Gravity might not even exist. I mean, we're talking about fundamental structural differences between universe types. And we live in the one that is good for us to live in because we're compatible with the universe in which we live. The universe in which we live necessarily resulted in us. So a lot of this goes off of a lot of my argument goes off of the concept of a multiverse being possible. Now, I'll explain later why that is not necessary for my argument to still make sense, that we can actually not have a multiverse and my argument still would work. But for now, let's go off this hypothesis, if it's even that there is a multiverse that preceded our Big Bang, or that still exists even, external to our universe, and our universe is just one of many, which is what that infinite symbol at the bottom there means with a U next to it. I mean, there's an infinite number of universes. We live in the one that has the right parameters for us to live in it, basically. And, of course, that's just barely true. The vast majority of our universe is completely and utterly incompatible with human life. It's just that we live in the one speck of dust that had the right conditions necessary for us to live. Now, the multiverse is this image here, of course, grossly simplified. But here we had different types of universes and different universe interactions. Like at the top left here, we have two universes merging to form a different universe. Maybe the different dimensions in each of these preceding universes combine in a funky way to produce this new universe. And from the inside of the resulting universe, they would perceive a Big Bang. But before that Big Bang event, there was a collapse of these other two universes that eventually intertwined to become that new universe. They have no way of knowing about these other two universes that came before because they can't observe anything external their own universe. In the top right, we have a universe that has always existed. It's just always been there. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's logically contradictory. How can something always exist? Why not? That's my question. Why not? I mean, what's wrong with always existing? I mean, a lot of these theists propose a God that always existed and always will exist, an eternal God. So if you're willing to concede that that kind of an entity could exist, why not a natural item? You know, that doesn't have a brain without a mind, or a mind without a brain, and all that unnecessary baggage. I mean, to me, a universe that has always existed is possible. Our universe isn't one of those. Our universe appears to have had a beginning about 13.73 billion years ago. Now, what came before that, we haven't the foggiest. But our universe could be any of these ones near the bottom here that aren't circular, that aren't eternal, where we have a beginning and nothing came before it. I don't particularly like that one because I don't see how nothing can do anything. But again, I don't have a reason to think that nothing can't do something, that something can't come from nothing. There's no evidence for that either. It seems logically contradictory that something could come from nothing, but that's just our intuition speaking, because we live in a universe where something always produces something. We don't have a nothing to examine, as Tracy Harris pointed out in an Atheist Experience episode. So we don't know if a nothing could produce something. I don't personally think nothing's even possible, that a nothingness could ever have been the case. I think existence is a brute fact, that something has always existed in one form or another. And at the bottom here you see a replicating universe, a reciprocating universe, where a universe expands and then it contracts, and then there's a big bang and it expands and then it contracts, and this goes on for quite some time. Now, our universe appears to be flying apart at an accelerated rate, so we don't see any reason to expect ours to contract into a big crunch and lead to another expansion. But who knows what came before our universe? Nobody. A universe that was different than ours but similar could have contracted, leading to the Big Bang that resulted in our universe, which is accelerating. And we could be the last link in that chain that had extended forever. It had been, eternally sustainable, this repetition of universes, until something was slightly off. One of the parameters was slightly off in this particular reincarnation of our universe, that now we're just going to fly apart. The acceleration is going to, the expansion is going to continue to accelerate, and there goes the end of that self-repeating universe. Because, quantum effects can cause slight changes in the early conditions of the universe that could result in a significantly different universe. Who knows? Nobody knows. If we look at the nature of the problem, it's really just about an unknown, which is what I'm looking at here in this image here. To the right of S, which is the Big Bang, is what we know, what we've observed. We can observe the expanding universe. We can conceptually reverse that and go back and say, well, if it's expanding, then if we go back in time, it was smaller, and if you go back far enough, it was actually a singularity, which is what the S stands for in this case. Of course, anything before 1 Planck second had passed in our universe is completely unknowable, because our scientific constructs don't even work at scales below that. So really, we can't really say anything about the singularity at all. We can say stuff about the universe up to 1 Planck second after the singularity, up to the present, and even into the future. We can project what might happen with our universe. But we can't say anything of what happened before that first Planck second had expired, just because time breaks down, and it's kind of part of our mathematics that we have to consider what time is to find out anything. So before that first Planck second had expired, we don't know anything. We don't know what the singularity was like. We don't know if there was, in fact, a singularity, or if that's just a mathematical construct that we're concluding based upon, reversing the tape of the universe all the way back to the beginning. We don't know what came before such a singularity, if such a singularity existed. So this big question mark here at the far left, that's where the God of the gaps happens. That's where they want to insert the God as the cause. But it can be a natural cause. There's absolutely no reason to invoke a an entity that had an intent at that point. Now, going back to that repeating universe concept, this is another image that kind of explains that further, where a previous big crunch led to our Big Bang, but our universe is going to expand at an accelerated rate and eventually just reach a heat death, because you keep expanding. It gets colder and colder and colder until there's absolutely no motion whatsoever that's recognizable, and time ceases to make any type of conceptual sense, because, of course, time is really the illusion that we place on things for changes happening. Event A came before event B. That's a time scale. If there are no more events, because the universe is effectively completely frozen after expanding to a ridiculous amount, then time kind of breaks down, because there's no more interactions, no more events. Even the atoms themselves fall apart. Even the subatomic particles fall apart. Nothing's permanent in this universe that we inhabit. At least that's how we're currently seeing it. But that doesn't say that the universe came before ours wasn't self-contained, that it didn't have a sufficient gravity to cause a contraction, or an insufficient acceleration to fight against that gravity. A lot of this is dark energy and that kind of talk that leads to this expansion force. Gravity overcomes that force and causes a contraction. We don't think it's going to happen in ours, because the expansion is so fast and it's accelerating that it doesn't seem like our universe is going to have a contraction phase. But that's just one of those possibilities. Time is illusory. It is this construct that minds like ours that have memory place on events that repeat, that happen, that change. Anything that changes requires there to be a time scale so that we can evaluate what happened. So this is all what time is. It's just something that we've done. Now, so as long as there are things that are changing, we can put a time scale, an actual linear axis that we can label T. And that's what I'm looking at here in this. And there's no reason that can't be eternal in one direction or both. In this case, I'm showing that it's time extends infinitely into the past, but there's no reason to think that it's not going to be infinite into the future as well. It's just at some point with our expanding universe, time inside this universe will not matter. It will just not matter, because there won't be any more changes to measure relative to each other. Nothing will happen after a certain point in our universe's expansion, the heat death. And of course, that's like trillions of years down the road. I think that's the estimate of it anyways. So again, you have to learn to accept this concept of the infinite, that there can be infinite time before. I mean, especially if you're going to be talking with theists who are going to suggest a creator that has always existed and always will exist. They're using infinity, so you might as well use it as well. Let me just put it this way. There's nothing that says that something cannot extend for an infinite series. I mean, we know this. We have rational numbers extend. I mean, there's an infinite. Infinity is the group of all rational numbers, because there is no end to it. That's by definition what it is. Now, people like William Lane Craig will argue that there are no actual infinites, but they'll argue for a God that is an actual infinite, which I find hysterical. It's like special pleading, so obvious. But this is basically the point, is that we don't know anything about what came before. And we live in a universe that's compatible with our existence. Because if it wasn't compatible with our existence, we wouldn't be in that universe. Going back to this image here, we're not going to be in universe 1, 2, or 4. I mean, if we found ourselves in a universe that was completely incompatible with our existence, that would be miraculous. That would be really, really weird to find out that our universe isn't compatible with us existing. Not just that life is a low in probability, that it's unlikely that life would develop and that life is exceedingly rare, as it appears to be the case in our universe, but that life can't happen That would be miraculous, to find yourself in a universe where life cannot happen. It would defy the laws of physics of that universe. But instead, we find ourselves in a universe that is compatible with our existence. Barely, but nonetheless, the physics do allow for us to exist. That's why we're in this universe. It's not because anybody created it that way. It's just because if it was different, we wouldn't be here talking about it. And that's more or less what the anthropic principle is all about, is looking at it from a humble standpoint and saying, oh, I'm in the universe that works for me. Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be in this universe? Why wouldn't the constants be tuned, be what they are, such that I'm compatible with the universe that I'm in? You know, that the universe is compatible with me. It's pretty much a no-brainer. Now, and it's not even like our universe isn't extremely complicated to the extent that we could call it a mess. It's not like there's a simplicity that would indicate some pure design to it, because complexity doesn't indicate design. Complexity isn't a good indicator for that. You'd want to look for simplicity, and our universe isn't that at all. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of the universe, when the forces split up, there are different ways. That's what this image here is about. It is anything but simple. I mean, the more we learn about the quantum world and the forces in our universe, the more we realize it is ridiculously, stupidly complicated and messy. The mathematics are messy. It is not something that looks pure, that looks clean, that looks intended. It looks like this is how the universe cooled down and how the forces separated from each other, and how the different how energy condensed into these different types of quanta and quarks and all this, and the four forces diverged. And you can see a lot of this happened within the first second of the universe. That's when the forces decoupled, was before the first second of the universe had even passed. And that's a full second. That's not a Planck second we're talking about. We're talking about a real second. Supergravity, see, that's getting into the conjecture hypothesis territory, and that happened before the first Planck second, which you can see at the bottom of the scale there on the bottom left. 10 to the negative 43 seconds. So we don't really know what that grand unifying force is that completes the picture, that unites gravity with the other forces, the weak force, electromagnetic, and strong nuclear force. We don't know what that is because we have no way to evaluate it. Mainly because our concept of time is so woven into the mathematics for describing everything that before a Planck second had expired, we really don't have a mechanism for describing things mathematically, let alone physically, to where we can say this is what the force was like, or this is how you define that force. It's pretty much hard to define something without using our current mathematical models. There is no other alternative at the moment. But yeah, my point is, look how messy this is. And if you want to look at the mathematics involved, go right ahead. It's not pretty, and it's not something that indicates a master engineer was involved. But of course, the burden of proof is on those that claim that one is involved, and they have to demonstrate that. I don't have to demonstrate that one doesn't exist. They have to demonstrate that one does exist. And as far as I can tell, we just happen to be in the universe that is compatible with us being in that universe. Because if it wasn't compatible, we wouldn't be here. So there really is no fine-tuning going on here. It's just we find ourselves where we should find ourselves, in a universe that can produce us. So either way, that's my little presentation on the fine-tuning argument going off of these constants and going into this anthropic principle concept a little bit deeper. Thanks again for watching, and have a good day.